Welcome to unDUBBED, the podcast that's unscripted, uncensored, and undeniably data. I'm Fee.
And I'm Sarah. Now, Tableau Conference 2026 has wrapped, and there's so much coming for Tableau across cloud, server, and next. So today, it's all about the good stuff on the horizon and what it means for the people who get to decide what their teams do next. Data leaders and decision makers.
And we've got two of our favourite people to get excited about it with. Kirk and Candi are co-founders of Paint with Data, a Tableau consultancy and Salesforce partner in Canada. Kirk has 25 years in business analytics across Cognos. Whew, that's a name that's a blast from the past. IBM, Kinaxis, and Salesforce, plus Tableau. This year, he's reached the pinnacle of Tableau recognition as a Tableau visionary. He's also a Tableau Ambassador, a Salesforce certified data cloud consultant, and he even wrote a book on data modeling in Tableau.
And Candi's a visual analytics specialist with a stack of Tableau and Salesforce certifications. She heads up the Canada Tableau User Group, and she's our fourth-time Tableau User Group ambassador. Her real love is helping clients bring their data stories to life. But before we dive in, please like and subscribe to unDUBBED, and most importantly, share this episode with a data leader who want to know what's coming.
Candi and Kirk, welcome to unDUBBED. We're so glad to have you both here.
Thanks for having us.
So pleased to be here.
Candi, there'll be plenty of people listening who haven't come across you yet. So tell us who you are, what you do, what you love doing in the data world.
I didn't come to data analytics or Tableau naturally. Like, I was a pharmacist first. And I decided at a certain point that I liked the data more than I liked pharmacy. So I switched over. And Tableau, as a product, made that really easy for someone who doesn't have a computer science degree. But I've always loved math, and I've always loved analysis. So I was applying those in my other roles, and, so just picked up Tableau and went with it.
Kirk, welcome back to unDUBBED. For those people who haven't heard your story, we'd love to hear it too. Who are you, and what's kept you hooked on data all these years?
So like you mentioned, I've been in data more or less for 25 years. And Candi started Paint with Data, so I was happy to join her. It was nice to actually, help clients day in and day out. And I guess I've just been a weirdly objective person for most of my life. So what motivates me is when people say stuff and I'm like, that doesn't sound right. Like, I have to go find out whether it's actually true or not. It's just the way I'm kind of wired. So it just kind of naturally, it's a really easy place for me to be in because I would be trying to find the answers to all these questions anyway.
Yeah, awesome. I think that's a thing with data people, being naturally curious and really wanting to get to the bottom of things as well. I feel like I firmly sit in that camp. Candi, we're going to switch now into question time too. Of everything that was announced at TC26, what's the one thing that you're most excited about?
Everything that they announced at Devs on Stage was supposed to come out within a year. So that's really positive. There's definitely a different tone to the conference. There's definitely some good things, little fixes, but I think Tableau's core has always been is that kind of analysis and the kind of curiosity and the flexibility to kind of do that. And I really feel that turning around now from all the little features that people keep asking for, they're still there and they're still adding those. But I feel that Tableau is getting back to the analysis, being the ones that uncover the really deep insight. And so I found Matthew Miller's presentation very interesting that way, which is not a fully baked concept or coming anytime soon. But I thought the tone of it was a really good sign that they were thinking that way again. So that was very exciting to me.
Yeah, so the thing that you're referring to, I think, was called Tableau Solve. From your memory, what were the things within Solve that excited you so much about the changes that will potentially come through?
Leveraging the current state of affairs and being able to get the answer, get the insight. So we've always used Tableau for finding the better insight or using analysis in that quick like drag and drop to like quickly get to that answer. And that's part of what we like to say for our clients is we get to the offending record in 4 clicks or 10 seconds, or so like to try and build that sort of triage for them so that they can take like a dashboard and dig into it and find the problem quickly and easily. And I think that that's what really spoke to me.
I really liked that part of Solve where it felt like it had productionized the ability to forecast a little bit more.
Yeah, and that's really in demand. You're always forecasting on your old data. So, I mean, anything can happen. But yeah.
Yeah. And then controversial, a little bit of write back as well.
Which is asked for a lot. Tableau has always tried to be a little bit proper by like not allowing write back. There's an extension that we use for clients all the time that writes back. But yeah.
I've implemented it at 2 large corporates before as well. It's one of these things that whether it's tidying up dirty data, we can't go back to source system and edit things. So there needs to be a way to adjust who actually sold something, so that if we're doing sales performance reporting or being able to look at the data and leverage sort of commentary that's in the moment and stuck then to that particular record. Kirk, was there anything that stood out for you around Solve?
That was my big one. And since you guys let a lot go on the podcast, I'll tell you a quick story about it. Like the night before, I was talking to Matthew Miller, and he goes, "You in particular are going to like something I'm going to show tomorrow." And he wouldn't tell me a lot of it, what it was, the appreciation night when we got the hoodies or whatever. And the next morning, and it's a quick story too, because the people know I've been talking to Francois a bit about golden analytics and stuff. I'm trying to name drop as much as I can here. And I remember talking to Francois in 2018. I'm like, dude, you got to let go. We'd like write back products, right? Like, I'm like, people want a plan, right? Like so many of our use cases of clients come to us is like, we want you for sales forecasting. I'm like, we can't really do sales forecast. Like, and people don't want to do like full on budgeting and stuff. There's lots of programs for that, but like little things like rough headcount planning or how many people, or what if we put people in this territory instead of that territory? And the way he did it was pretty slick. It was very Tableau-y with the like just grab a cell and drag it down. It will automatically fill in the forecast and stuff. So as long as the models are kind of robust there, I was really excited. So I thought it was the best part. I thought it was way, way, way overdue. It's too bad that Sigma had to come along and have that feature for Tableau to finally wake up to it. But it's there if it's coming. Do you know what I mean? I'm excited. I'm equally excited about Solve, and I know Fiona and I talked about this offline, but the quality of life stuff I get really excited by. I know other people don't, but I know like Andy Kriebels, I continue to name drop, has been doing like map layers now in NLT for a long time. And I'm like, the whole reason I love Tableau is it gives me XY coordinates. I don't want to create my own XY coordinates. So things like, multiple like chart layers instead of map. Like, I mean, it was so obvious. Like you already generate the XY axes. Why do I have XY coordinates? Why do I have to do it? Right? Like I don't do it at a belligerent. So I'm really excited for it to come.
Yeah. So for people that don't understand what a map layer is or what potentially a chart layer is, can you just walk through your explanation of what that might look like?
Yeah, if anyone's used certainly anything like Photoshop, it like, you do is you drop layers on top of each other, right? Or even in PowerPoint, you can drop like an object on top of, and you make it transparent and drop it on top of another one. And I guess to step back for people who don't know what Tableau did from day one, which was a little different, is the reason you can do so many funky chart types is Tableau, when you drag things to rows and column shelf, they automatically create an XY axis on where to place things. So with maps, all that they are is XY coordinates. That's all they've ever been, right? So it's just an XY. And then so what map layers were that came out a long time ago now, maybe in 2019, is the ability to just layer maps on top of each other, right? So why can't we take other pills and layer those on top of each other like we can with map layers? So that's what it looked like is what's coming. So the other cool thing about that is every layer could be from a different data source because the data doesn't need to know about each other. They're just getting mapped on top of each other, right? So sometimes it's really hard to do things like scaffold dates together. But you could effectively scaffold dates together by dropping different dates and then different measures on top, and they're just going to sit on top of each other, which will give you a kind of like a cool time series stuff without needing to do some crazy data modeling in the background.
We met up with Roxanne and like complimented her on the devs on stage in the data village afterwards. And it wasn't obvious, I guess, in the flow of but the viz layers is going to be 4 different, like she used 4 different data sources. So she's like, yeah, and it's going to be 4. And we're like, really? And she went, oh, that wasn't clear. Like, darn. I thought that was clear. And we're like, oh, right, sure. But that has a lot of implications too, right? Because like she's obviously not joining. She's just using the XY coordinates to to layer those on top of each other. I mean, in her case, it was a date axis, and she was planning her trip. So, and then she was layering on 4 different data sources, which had comparable dates.
Yeah.
So that could be cool.
Yeah. And some other things I see use for, and I've seen it used in the map layers, is even just some basic formatting that Tableau doesn't allow for. So, when things are kind of just not where you want them. And I'm hoping with this viz layers that you'll be able to kind of, get them a little bit nicer, and, just little things, I think, like that I've seen used in map layers. So looking forward.
I do have
definitely a little bit of a cleanup too, right? Because there's the conversion from different dynamic field formatting, she called it. We're using 3 different sheets, using the hidden containers to like layer on different sheets is clunky, right?
No.
Seems like a simple thing, but.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to save so much time and performance. So the performance is going to be awesome coming in. And Sarah's laughing on the inside because I'm kind of the performance one in our team. And so coming through, so I'm genuinely excited about that. But I did want to pull back to Solve on just one thing before we move on to the next exciting topic. So I heard word on the street, I'm not going to name names, but I heard that it may be out in beta this year sometime. Now, that would really surprise me. I hope that that's something that comes through. But yeah, I wouldn't mention it unless it was somebody that would be in the know.
Kirk's going to go call Matthew Miller to make sure he's on the beta.
No, well, so the 2 things he was on record is that everything had to be at least be code, not Figma. And I think that it had to at least have the hope of shipping within the year. So that could line up.
Okay. So Candi, there's been a bit of a worry doing the rounds that Tableau Cloud has been racing ahead and kind of left Tableau Server a little bit behind. What do you feel that TC26 signaled about where Server's heading? And is there anything you're excited about there?
The Tableau Server seems to be getting a lot of love in that they're moving, even the LLM stuff, they're moving to Tableau Server. I did not think that they would do that. I think that really means that they've really accepted that it's going to be around.
Interestingly enough, Paint with Data is also partnering with BizTree to use TabMove like us as well, which helps people to move from server to cloud in an automated way. That's really exciting. What did you see in the product TabMove that made you so excited to jump on board?
Well, I saw you guys interview Timothy and assumed you knew what you were doing. So that was the only. No, the fact that they can move everything mostly. 2 things. One, that it's predictable enough that it can be a fixed price contract, which we normally hate doing because we get burnt every time. But this one's a lot more predictable, and that they can move, everything. And Timothy, only he can with his level of humbleness for how smart he is it doesn't always move virtual connections. I'm like,
Yeah.
People have to be out of their mind if they're using virtual connections anyway. It's okay. So I would get them off it as part of this process. If you have virtual connections, no. So yeah, the fact that it can move things, that in the combination that doesn't need published data sources anymore, can use Bridge directly, makes that a lot better. So yeah, no. So we're super excited about it.
Those guys are really interesting. Timothy and Tristan, the creativity to come up with the ideas they have. I attended Tristan's session as well, and he basically walked through his hackathon project, and it was really interesting, thoughtful too. Because I think the accessibility stuff, like Tableau, I don't know what is in some of the other products for accessibility, but we have a client who is low vision, and the way he describes how he uses it and those things, like, I think has not gotten a lot of love in recent memory, and they've put a lot of those features in now, which was also in Devs on Stage. There was some accessibility features that were mentioned as well, and some of the stuff is really cool because you don't necessarily think that somebody with accessibility problems is necessarily going to be using Tableau, but you know, in a workforce, like, everybody has to have access to it. So yeah.
Kirk, I know that composable data sources have been a real pet project for you on the lead up into TC, and they were talked about a lot, and I'm super excited about them. Can you tell us what they actually unlock for an organization?
Yeah, they unlock a lot, and I think we'll even get more once we get into it. It feels like one of those, capabilities that's going to allow us to do that, right? So first, I guess the problem without composable data sources. So what happens today is, imagine you have a published data source that's available for you, and someone asks you a question about that data source, and you don't own the data source, right? So what you effectively have to go back and try to find all the tables that compose that data source. What were the relationships between them? Find another table, the table of missing information, and then you have to republish that, right? So not surprisingly, people end up with like a bazillion published data sources. Now, in the age of AI, if it catches on more, like now when you get agents asking questions, they also talk about being chatty and using tokens. Now have to figure out which of these bazillion data sources, but so do people, even without the agents, right? So that's the first problem. The second problem is there are a lot of data prep problems that you can't solve in Tableau Desktop or like in a published data source that you might want to use prep for. So about 3 years ago, I wrote a blog on Ken and Kevin's site on when to use prep and when to use desktop and when you can use the middle. And the reason why is because when you took a prep flow, unless you had access to a database, you have to publish it as a published data source, and then it's a dead end. And it's also one big table. It's just a flat table. So now you'll be able to use the output of prep inside other data sources. So that's at a high level. In the workflow, though, where they've really killed it with the UX, if you're in the flow of work, which was the whole point of Tableau in the first place, back to my example, if you got this published data source, say, and someone says, we're talking about mapping, right? So someone says, I'd really love to map where our customers are. And you're like, wow, I can't believe geography is not in here. But say you have a geography table that sits there as a published data source, you can just go to your data source pane without touching the published data source, just go add another published data source, create a relationship to it, and then continue on with your analysis. And because it's always relationship based and not join based, it's not going to break anything that you've already built. Because that's one of the other great advantages of relationships over joins is that your workbooks, nothing in your workbook's going to get messed up because it's just a table hanging off the end and it's not in the query tree of anything that you've already built. So yeah, the use cases are going to be really, really big. So I'll wrap by another one, like you guys came to the presentation Candi and I did at TC. I think there's some really complex LODs or even things you'd want to do in LOD that you couldn't do. So what we want is everyone wants this trade-off of, I want atomic level detail, but then, so I want every single transaction, but I also want to be able to do these like complex aggregations on top of them. Like now you could take that transactional table, you could create an aggregate table out of it, do your crazy LODs in it in prep so they only run once a day, take that table and just bring it back into your existing data source with the atomic level detail. And then Tableau is going to get a lot faster in that case, like a lot faster, and be able to do the kind of calculations that you can't do in Tableau today. So yeah, you see a lot of this. I have a new blog out called Paint with Data Insights, where I'm trying to write about this as well. I'll be doing a whole bunch of Tug Talks, some with Will Perkins, but we'll be out there talking about this more because I think it's going to be really big. The last thing is the semantic thing, because you asked. So almost no one puts comments on their fields in Tableau. I find almost weekly, I go to people, you can put a comment on that, and then other authors can see what the field's used for, and AI can read that field. And they're like, what? Like they don't even know it's there, right? So it's a lot easier now because take my other example where I had to go find all those tables. Like pre-composable data sources. Am I going to put all those comments in again, right? And they might be different, right? But from a governance and scale, if we publish more tables as published data sources as opposed to full-on data sources, then people can compose, which is where the name comes from, their own data source. And it's going to have all that kind of rich metadata, which is going to be a lot more like a semantic layer than, these joined up published data sources that, we see so typically today in Tableau.
So you've mentioned there that we'll gain some performance improvements because we'll be able to push out the fixed LODs, for instance, into prep.
Mm-hmm.
But we've also got the benefits of relationships as well, which often kick out the LODs as well. How is the performance that you've seen on composable data sources when you're pulling them together and creating the relationships? Have you seen performance improvements holistically, or have you seen that sometimes these relationships can also slow things down?
Yeah, it's early days because I only have it on the beta site and I don't want to put real data on the beta site. But in talking to the product management and development teams, it should perform as well as, say, a typical relationship or multi-factor relationship model does now, because it effectively creates the same query trees that they would. What I'm hopeful for, I know they want to get a whole bunch of more features in. Personally, what I'd like to see, they're working on things like creating aggregate metric tables and stuff in Tableau is a plan. Sorry, I don't think they're working on. I'd rather them do a better prep integration directly into Tableau and then work on optimizing these queries so that they get even faster. Because I think that's where they have to go. Because they've been building these things like multi-fact and this. I hope that they spend some time optimizing that a little bit. If you can imagine what I'm picturing as a UX almost is when you drag a logical table in today and you right click and go open, and then you get that old school Tableau join interface. Imagine if when you clicked open, you got all the options you had in prep and it brought you into prep to like create something. And then when you're done, you don't even have a prep output. What you have is you have a logical table, which is what the prep output would have been without having to jump out to prep, do that work and come back in from a UX. But it'd be a lot easier than building something new. Do you know what I mean? Because they could effectively just call an existing component and just make the UX a bit better.
You kind of have to take a step back how we envision this going, because currently people have these massive data sources that they have kind of patched together to answer a particular question or for a particular project. And then it's attached to this dashboard, and then time moves on, and then they get a new dashboard and somebody asks a new question and they create a whole new big data source that answers that question that has components of this and then maybe something else. And then the point is that in order to do that, everything has to be a lot leaner. It has to be clean. It has to be certified. It has to, like in order to be able to do that and not spend $1 million like in tokens, like these things have to be very organized. Like if we take the components of it, like we take the source datas and we build a good source data through Tableau Prep or whatever, we certify that and make that a component. And then we make another one a component. And it seems like then we're having all kinds of components. But in actuality, like having 5 components that keep getting matched together to answer different questions is less than building these big data sources that sit in Tableau Cloud or Tableau Server and only get used once and then shelved and then forgotten about. And then we don't know what's in them. And by having these separate components and then putting them together at the time, like in different formations, makes our systems much leaner and easier to use and easier to leverage AI against, and therefore easier not to chew up a whole bunch of tokens. That's the whole like coming together of all of this stuff, like composable data sources and AI and having certified data sources. A lot of the things that we see happening going forward like are kind of going to come out of these pieces.
Yeah, just quickly, the other thing that flows out of them is now you're not using service accounts for databases flowing around because people can just use the published data sources. If your published data sources that are your components of this composable data sources are all extracts, then you don't have to worry about great big snowflake bills or whatever. Like there's so many downstream benefits to this as well.
Right. I think just one thing that you touched on there is something that I've heard maybe 4 or 5 times in the last 2 weeks, which is people can save a lot of money through extracts, because once you've extracted it up there, there's no ongoing cost for you to be running all of your queries against it. Whereas if you're running queries directly off Snowflake or Databricks or whatever, your queries can be really chatty. I mean, we've got a dashboard at the moment. The front page is 25 sheets. That's 25 individual queries that are firing off. Like, if that's going against a cloud database instead of going against a extracted data source, that will soon add up if people are using it regularly.
People spend so much time on this data source development, but it does help to have a scaffold of what's going to happen at the top level. We have these data components, and then we can be flexible with how we put them together. Having these extracts and published data sources gives us the flexibility to not incur all these extra costs, which people don't think about.
I feel Tableau's been on a journey. When I started using it just over 10 years ago, I remember being a little bit shocked that there wasn't a semantic layer that I could access for this reusability. And we kind of had to think in big flat tables for a long time. And it's gone on that journey. Like you said, it's got certified ones now, and relationships came along. But this feels like that kind of final step where it's going to allow us to think more like data analysts and data architects again. And we're going to have to stop making these like shortfalls that we've had to make in the past. So I'm excited to read your blogs that are coming up, and we'll be sure to put those in the show notes.
Candi, AI showed up in nearly every demo this year. Can you explain to us in plain terms, what does agentic analytics actually change about how a data team works day to day?
Agentic analytics opens up a natural language corridor into your data. So instead of having a static dashboard, it allows you to ask your question as opposed to having to spend a lot of time making a visualization. Back to Kirk's comment about having a well-curated data source that has descriptions and things that the AI can use, that has to be all in place before somebody can just start typing a natural language question in against a data source to get something truly out of it. It doesn't mean that there's not work involved in it. It just means that if you've put in the time and you've put in the work and you've really governed your data sources well, and you've clean them up and made them AI ready, then when you really need the answer, then you can start to just ask it, as opposed to have to dig into Tableau and start making visualizations and narrowing things down.
And I know you're talking about descriptions and comments. You were working with one of our clients and you were getting AI within the tool to help with the descriptions, and they were pretty bang on. So not the huge job that maybe it needs to be, but definitely one that's required.
Yeah, it's a skill, I think, and a discipline is probably the best way of describing it. No analyst or developer wants to document everything to the nth degree and provide that context. But the amazing thing about the new Tableau environment and Tableau Next, and that's primarily for Salesforce core customers, is that you have to go through the semantic layer in order to get to the visualization. So it creates that barrier or that discipline. And because the Tableau agent is in there and, the LLM requires that context of that query, it's really important to get it right. But I did find that when I hit the little auto generate, it got me about 95% of the way there, and then I would just update it. It was the occasion that it was completely off track, but that's the same as any AI result.
My reaction when I use that is when I look at an empty box and have to think about typing something, it's very daunting and I don't want to do it. When the AI gets it, even say it got 70% right, whether it's 70 or 90, it's a very human reaction, which might be a crappy one, but it is to go, that's not quite right. And you want to fix it anyway. It appeals to I want to write a better, it's so much easier to tweak an existing one than it is to write into a blank text box.
Yeah, to have to come up with something entirely on your own, it's easier to edit. And I agree, cleaning up a data source is monotonous work. So to have the AI kind of assist you and make it more accessible is much better.
Now, Kirk, Tableau MCP has been out in the wild for a while now, connecting to tools like Claude and Slack. What's the one thing a leader should be doing about it right now?
If you're going to embed in a port, so the first thing is you definitely have to not use the equivalent of a service token, right? So I'm not even sure if you could do that, might be violating your license agreement anyway, right? So if you're going to use it inside a portal, you should be using, without getting overly technical, you should be using the JSON web token and user attributes to do it. But let's just say a more simple case where you're going to let people ask questions. You should make everyone use their own personal access token, which is easy to grab. And then they should be using that when they register the MCP, because then if you have row level security, and I tested this recently, it keeps the row level security. I even tried to get it to break the row level security, and I got chastised by Claude for asking us to do this in a good way. The other thing, though, is there's been a lot of people in the Tableau community, especially, we were talking about semantic models already, who've been I don't want to hear about semantic models or whatever. I'll give you a good example of this. Is we're working with a transportation company that does it today. We're just starting this Claude journey or whatever, and they have cost per mile. And the field's called CPM. And so you guys do marketing. So they get the CPM field. You ask Claude, I want to know the cost per mile, whatever. The field, before the field's commented, right? What it does is it doesn't find that when I ask for cost per mile. I'm sure what it did was it went to the web and it looked at CPM, and it went CPM is cost per 1,000 impressions, because that's the more common CPM definition. And then what it had to do is it went and it found a bunch of data sources, and it created its own data source on the fly. And then it created its own calculation. It was pretty crazy how many tokens it consumes to do that. I think it was Igor, but I don't want to put him on the spot, said, they were testing their queries against MCP, and I think they're averaging 58 cents a query or something. You wouldn't use AI for very long if it was costing you 58 cents a query, right? So they're very chatty and less. So it's very easy to set up. If people haven't done it before, I recommend to do it. It's particularly easy in Claude Desktop and free. You can have the MCP set up and running and asking questions in, I bet you, end to end, 2 to 3 minutes. What I recommend people do if they have a chatty Tableau cloud site is make a new cloud site just for your AI questions, and strip down all the data sources and make it easy for the agent not to have to look all over the place to get answers to stuff and risk confusing people. But it's pretty cool. And the new use case, it's not that far off, because the desktop authoring API is in its third release now, without getting too much into specifics under NDA. But people are going to come up with amazing use cases. Tristan had that one last year at DataFam Europe, where 2 people could update a workbook at the same time. I don't know if you've seen that presentation. Amazing, right? But imagine even little things like rounded corners just came out, right? Imagine you've got 10 dashboards in a workbook, and you say, I want rounded corners on them. Imagine the pain in the butt. But you could just say, could you please round all my corners at 25 and do inner padding at 10 to make sure there's space? Boom, your workbook would be updated, right? So that is very close. That spec's very close. So the AI can already do it. It's just the spec's not that there, right? And then the last thing I'd say is it's very easy to write skills if people haven't played with them in things like Claude. So a skill is, you could write a skill to say, we don't want people ever to have pie charts. Even people are going to ask for pie charts. When they do it, give them a tree map, and it'll force a tree map. So and these skill files are written completely in natural language or whatever for it to interpret. I think it's exciting. I think people are going to jump in, realize they get wrong answers a lot, and they're going to realize that they really have to curate their content properly to A, not spend a ton of money, and B, make sure that people get the right answers if they make that available.
Oh, I'm just thinking about if you could put your client's style guide in there with your own that says, I know whole face lit up when you talked about just padding consistency, those things that are so tedious for us.
Right. And it's as simple in the skill file of literally saying, use this color palette, right? We always want our corners slightly rounded. We want inner padding to be this. We want if there's two objects side by side, give them 5 pixels, but give them 10 on the outside. So there's 10
Yes.
pixels
Yeah.
everywhere. And then you could just say update to our style guidelines and update the thing to your style. It's like, that's close. It's not there today, but it's like, that's within a small number of months, I would guess.
Well, for a hot second there, we had like templates, right? But, any good PowerPoint designer knows that if you're going to do a PowerPoint presentation, you can like copy the slides so that everything is in the same exact spot so that when you go from dashboard to dashboard, then it doesn't bounce around. Like, that drives me crazy, right? Because you can't do that in Tableau. Like, you have to reinvent the wheel every time. Because if you're doing a dashboard or, a series of dashboards for a company, there's a side panel. And like, then you have to write down what all the parameters are. And sometimes it's 101 and sometimes it's 103. It kills me. And it's silly things. It doesn't really add a lot of value to the data and the analytics and the insights that you're getting from it. But it's like very irritating when you're working with it.
It's the trust factor as well. So all of those little things that you are doing to make it look pixel perfect that are boring to do, let's face it, they're boring to do, but it actually improves the trust when people look at it because they're like, oh, things aren't moving around, they're not in a different space. I mean, I've been working on a client's risk and compliance. It's more of a presentation than a dashboard is what I would call it. So they need to review what they're doing, in terms of each quarter and their compliance. And I've been stuck with 350 sheets in this dashboard because it's quite comprehensive and each tile has somewhere between 3 and 6 sheets. Bringing it together, and there's rounded corners. So there's everything that you're saying, Candi. There's different padding, there's different requirements in those corners. There's everything to get it looking absolutely perfect. But now they can run their risk reporting at the click of a prep button. They run the workflow. It brings everything together. It's really easy for them to input the data into, but that's not great for Tableau. So we reshape the data and then it pushes it out and then they can just download it as a PDF and everything's done and it's perfect. But it takes a lot of patience. And it actually got me thinking, is this really what I want to be doing with my life?
Yeah.
And so yes, the analyst role is evolving. Yes, there's more governance practices, which I don't think people are talking about enough or writing about enough at the moment around, well, what does that look like? What does ethics look like? What does governance look like and what I'm pulling together? What do I need to be doing? And we need to evolve the way that we are delivering work. And hopefully some of this extra grind will be taken out by these great LLMs.
Well, that's ultimately the thing, right? We had some poor little thing in a company that was like spending a month curating this Excel dashboard, like that looked beautiful in the end. But like, do you know what I mean? Like she would get the download from the company, then she would have to do all these modifications to it. And it would take a long time. And then we gave them Tableau. We gave a dashboard in Tableau. And now we seem to be getting bogged down with these little minutia items, right?
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is faster to develop, get rid of all the finicky things or as much as we can, but watch out for those tokens. That's a big call for the leaders. So maybe faster to develop, faster to perfect, but do look out for those hidden costs.
So moving into the last part of our potty today, I thought I'd throw up the final presentation slide that was at Devs on Stage, which shows you all the things that they talked about, not in labs, but what's actually coming as well. I thought it'd be good to put this up here and get you both to call out the things that mean something to you that we haven't spoken about and explain what they will mean to people out in the wild.
There's a lot of interesting things there. From the Tableau MCP is going to be huge because I think that's going to be our vector into easily connecting Tableau up to an AI. It's pretty slick, as Kirk has alluded to. The REST API connector, I'm really looking forward to seeing what the data devs do with that. That's going to be a big community thing to see what those guys come up with. Like navigate and chart during the presentation was definitely my favorite section. I liked Roxanne's story, and I thought that she had a lot of really cool features, that the chart layers all had their own data source. So that's pretty interesting. I look forward to seeing how that can be implemented with lots of different use cases. I forgot about the drive time. Yeah, that's going to be cool.
I think I saw that in this release, 2026.2.
I mean, that could have a lot of implications for the transportation companies.
Absolutely. And I think that people even said to you, Sarah, that it was better than Google Maps. Was that right?
Yeah, that's what Roxanne was saying when we caught up with her afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really exciting. The traveling salesman is always like one of the big things that people are trying to analyze and understand how long it will take for people to drive. And so instead of having just an entire circular radius, the fact that there were ragged edges to the radius was super interesting. So it would be really cool for clients that have area managers or deliveries that are going on.
Yeah. When I look at the list, I think, imagine Tableau data sources on public. It could be really cool for things like, they do Iron Viz, and I always think I'm going to sign up and I'll get that data set and I'll play, and you never do. But if you could just connect to it on public, would be kind of neat. The bring your own connector to Tableau Cloud. A lot of people who probably aren't in the enterprise space don't get how big of a deal that is, because Bridge is kind of a pain in the butt, and it gets you around from having to use Bridge, which could be a pretty big thing for sure. The other one is, I hate the idea of people using Teams because it's such a crap product. But I do think the Tableau add-in for PowerPoint could be big and help Tableau out, like from losing maybe some things there to Power BI, et cetera. It becomes a pretty big deal. We talked about chart layers. Transparent tooltips would be cool for sure.
My accessibility alarm bells went off when they said that one.
It's funny that it's 3 after accessibility viz authoring too. SVG export's actually a big thing because some of the Tableau image look pretty bad, and SVGs scale obviously perfectly and are a lot smaller for sure. We talked about data-driven formatting. The other thing that I want to be able to do conversational data modeling. Like, I don't expect it to build a data model once, but it would be nice to say, we use this table as both a child and parent relationship, so sometimes it's got to join back to itself. But worded in business speak and do it. And then the last one, I think they meant bring the viewer a conversational analytics experience inside Tableau, so they didn't have to go to Claude and use MCP to do it, kind of thing. So as long as they make that last one accessible to viewers without some crazy license level, that could be really good. You guys left before I asked this question of Mark and team, but I don't understand why they're so hyped up on this headless BI. I get why they have to do headless BI. I don't know why they would push people to headless BI, though. It's great if you want to ask questions from Claude or Cursor or whatever, but you know what? It's even better. You can ask them from within Tableau, right? Like, why would they drive people out of the platform when they didn't need to drive people out of the platform? So if that's what that last one is, which I think it is, do you know what I mean? Could be pretty big as well.
I kind of have a different point of view on driving people out of the platform. I really love the direction that they're heading with headless. And the reason being, it feels disjointed to force people to log in somewhere else to view their data and analytics. And if they can be doing it in the flow of where they are, now whether that flow is Slack or your favorite Teams, or it's within Salesforce because they're an AE and they need to be doing their sales, that to me feels a more natural progression for people to use data than asking them, hey, can you log on here and then find the report and which is a clunky experience
Yeah.
when people aren't doing that naturally every day like us data people.
I think what is not obvious from the mobilize and unlock section that was more obvious live is there's a lot of interaction with Slack. So like Slack played a big part in her showcase of the new features and how she dug into Slack and she looked for answers of like, what could my next project be? Like, what are people looking for? Tableau kind of combing through that thing and then producing a visualization for her. That interaction I thought was really cool. Like we use Slack a lot. So, that could be very interesting on a enterprise scale to be able to leverage those day-to-day conversations and determine like what people need answers to and like where they're going for those answers to sort of assimilate some of that information and bring it all under one roof and get everybody on the same page, I think could be key, like in the headless BI kind of conversation for sure.
So in the Tableau Plus SKU, or they had traditionally included Tableau Next. So this way, I'm definitely agreeing with you, Fee, which is I wish they would have bundled Slack with it. Do you know what I mean? So like I like the idea of a Slack first kind of UI for a lot of this, like because it's a conversational place anyway, right? So my last name drop of the night would be like I talked to Mark Crocker about this a couple of weeks ago. I like it because whether I'm talking into it, when I'm speaking to a group to get an answer, or I'm DMing someone or like a small channel, right? Or I'm asking an agent, that's a very natural feeling. Like they're all the same, kind of, if you know what I mean. So I do like the Slack first is like that UX is very natural. And it's also because it can listen, it's also a great place to get your data-driven alerts and all that stuff, which, we kind of get, but they're not that smart now. They could be a lot smarter, right? Like the agent could be listening for things specific to you to be able to give you. I do like Slack first for that stuff for sure.
There's a couple of other things that you guys didn't talk about on this page that just make me really happy, which is the Tableau Next extensions. So that's being able to use Tableau Cloud visualizations within Tableau Next, which I think is super cool, given currently there's not a lot of flexibility in the different types of visualizations. So I'm really looking forward to that. Will be interesting because I'm assuming that many people won't end up with both the plus licensing on that, but we'll see how it goes. And the other thing was just SVG export, because I like to have a higher resolution on things that come out, and sometimes the PNG is not good enough.
One other thing, the radial charts. Esther did present it in Tableau Next, and I asked her later on if that was coming to Tableau Desktop as well, which it is. She said she just chose to present it in Tableau Next. But one piece that was in there that I thought may have been overlooked was the ability to turn a ban on, like just a quick hit of a button and a ban pops up. So I'm hoping to see that in more charts as well. That would be really nice. Most of our time we put a chart up there and we're always doing a ban call out on it as well.
I think it feels like Tableau's the only BI product left that doesn't have a ban as a chart type too. Like everybody has a ban as a chart type.
Interesting.
Good thinking.
All right, folks, Candi and Kirk, this has been a fun look at what's on the horizon for Tableau. Candi, we'd love to hear from you first. What's the one thing you really want a data leader walking away from and itching to go and explore?
I really like it when the data leaders are really driven. I come from pharmacy and healthcare. And so often in my world before that, it was like the data was so hard to get. And you can imagine clinical trials, and it's so complex, and people don't understand the metrics. They don't understand the statistics behind it. So they just make these off the cuff kind of decisions. But I'd like to see the data leaders build a data-driven, data-based decision-making organization and to be proud of. We're talking about having all of this in sort of in a flow of work. Is the answer there where they need it, as opposed to having to leave Tableau and go to a different product? To like even like we were talking earlier about how like being able to have write back. So if they have to leave Tableau and go to a different product and update that file and then come back to Tableau and go, okay, is that right now? It's like that like totally kills their workflow. But as a data leader, if you want to build an organization that's foundation is the data and the information and the insight, then you're going to want to have something that flows with people's work and that they can have it at their fingertips and they can have it where they're having those conversations, as opposed to having to go, oh, I got to go look that up. We're getting closer to that spot, and we're getting, as opposed to if you want to have a conversation about data, we're all going to have to move to Tableau. Instead of that, now we're moving from a situation where it's like, okay, well, where are you going to work? Where are your conversations going on? Like, let's move Tableau to that. And then you can just work as you usually would and work in your workflow to make sure that those insights are surfaced when you need them.
And I think we've been talking about keeping it in the flow for ages, and it's nice to see it's getting there more and more. And Kirk, over to you. What would you like to leave our listeners with today?
First, thanks for having us on. We had so much fun together in San Diego. It's nice to continue it here this morning tonight. I would say more than ever, the important thing is for data leaders to realize what you really are now more than ever, business consultants. So it's not your technical skills that are the most important thing. And certainly don't get hung up on the purity of whether it be a visualization or the way you use fourth normal forms in a database or whatever. Like the key is like, take the time to actually understand the kind of questions that the lines of business need answered and become an expert in being able to answer those with data, I think is what's really big. And then your plus one is to be a connector. Tableau makes this a lot easier now than it used to. When you're talking to sales, go, are you also talking to service? Because maybe when service calls go up, that's a leading indicator of your sales going down or what it might be. So you can be the kind of connective glue that helps them work through that stuff, like by either disproving things that they think are true that are causing friction, right? Or creating connections to make the business run better because there are correlations that matter. Your consultant's first, technologist second, I think is what you should get, because the technology is changing quick, so quick anyway. Your technical skills obviously matter, but they don't matter like what they used to matter.
I think we forget how much departments work in silos.
Like to be able to have a bird's eye view of the organization and their data needs is really important more than ever to set up the right backbone.
So where can people find you both and learn more about your work?
Certainly at paintwithdata.com, although we don't spend enough time keeping that up to date. It's always a good reminder. And then we're both, maybe me more than Candi, very active on LinkedIn. But especially if you're in North America, feel free to reach out. We do a lot of advisory style consulting services, which are our favorite gigs. So we let people contract with us for very small amounts of hours, like even as small as say 20 hours. We do building out stuff, but sometimes it's just as simple as empowering them so that they don't make the mistakes that we've made over a long period of time, or because they don't live with this stuff day in and day out. So they can find us on LinkedIn or Paint with Data, I guess, or now Paint with Data Insights as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, we can both vouch for your fractional services since we've both used them as well. And it's been absolutely wonderful to know that we're not having to commit a massive amount of money, but then having that ability to have a conversation and go back and forth on things that aren't necessarily within our wheelhouse and just getting that support. So definitely worth that as well. And I think that what we're seeing more broadly in market is that there's a lot more fractional services that are popping up globally.
Yeah. And of course, if you are looking at upgrading from Tableau Server to Tableau Cloud and are based in Canada, reach out to Kirk and Candi also. And of course, if you're in New Zealand, Australia, or Singapore, reach out to us. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing everything you have today with us. We've genuinely learnt so much.
Your insights have been invaluable, and we really appreciate you taking the time out in your evenings to spend it with us and with our community.
If you've loved this conversation as much as we did, hit follow, leave us a review, and share this episode with your fellow data fans.
What a conversation, Sarah. I mean, if you take things away today, I think people should make it these. 1, Tableau's core or the standardized products on desktop, cloud, and server are genuinely getting some love this year. 2, the foundation that you're building with your data is definitely worth investing in. The composable, the governed, the well-modeled, everything that the data and the visualizations get built on. And 3, listening to other people talk about what happened at TC reminds me there's so much coming, and I'm so excited.
Couldn't agree more. Huge thanks to Candi and Kirk. You'll find all the links to their work and everything we've mentioned in the show notes below. And if you got a lot out of this, don't forget to share it with a leader or a data enthusiast you think would get just as much out of it as we did.
And don't forget to subscribe. This has been unDUBBED, where we're unscripted, uncensored, and undeniably data.